Hello, everybody. This is Steve McKeon.
And this is Lupe Munoz, and welcome to the Leadership Exchange.
Looking forward to our conversation today, Lupe. We've got our guest here, Derek Crager. We're going to let Derek give us a little bit more introduction and kind of his background, but let me just start it off by saying Eric is a entrepreneur and founder of a company called Practical AI. This conversation is not necessarily going to be about practical AI, but really taking a look at training and some of the importance around training and leadership and what leaders need to understand as a part of their responsibilities for supporting teams in and around training, and then definitely talk about some of the emerging technology there in training. Derek, let me go ahead and throw it over to you because I think you did a great job when we first met, giving us your history and background and kind of how you got to where you're at now. So if you can start there, that would be great.
Appreciate it, Stephen. Thank you, Lupe, as well. My background for the audience here, I started in industrial construction. I came out of high school, tried to do college and apprenticeship at the same time, living on my own, and ended up sticking with the apprenticeship trades and came through the trades. I spent about 4 years in construction at some big companies, a lot of automotive, pharmaceutical, you name it, TV, appliance. But then I got into what we called in-house. I went into automotive and I was on the floor in automotive for about 15 years, worked my way up from maintenance and repair up through engineering, process engineering, and then over time worked myself into the learning ranks because I had a special perspective on learning. One thing I'll throw in here, a variable in my life and something that I did not know myself for sure until I was age 50, and I'm 58 today, was that at age 50, I was diagnosed autistic, ADHD, and dyslexic. So looking back on my life, I always had usually an answer and a lot of times the right answer to make things happen, but I lacked the social skills to convey in the right, I guess, manner. And so I was shot down more often than not. The story that we can get into in a minute was all the way to about 2018, 2019 when I joined Amazon, and I was working for a leader who knew how to handle me, knew how to give me enough rope to do the things I do well. And she covered my back on the things I didn't do so well. So that was really a good foundation for me. And the feather in my cap, my time at Amazon, I was asked to build their first leadership onboarding during 2020. And that was the time when Amazon was going from 500 physical buildings to 1,000 in 1 year. And in about 10 months' time, I trained every new manager in RME, which is reliability maintenance engineering. So, you know, the analytical and the wrench turners among us. But it was my job to train them, and it was their job to train their people. And from that time, I think we went from 35,000 skilled trades to about 70,000 skilled trades in North America. And the core thing that I learned is the success was built on building relationships first and having trust and respect. And that was the foundation to our success. And that success turned into Amazon's highest rated training program in the history of the company. And if anybody knows what NPS scores are, we were at a 92 NPS on a scale from minus 100 to positive 100. So lots of good stuff I learned there. I'm excited to get into that during our talk today, gentlemen.
Derek, thanks. I was intrigued when you first told us the story. I think our audience also is going to be really interested in it. And I think the path that you've taken really speaks to, a lot of our audience as we're trying to connect with people that are in new leadership positions, maybe new to leadership, and just dialing in some of those lessons that we've learned. And as we bring in guests like yourself is to make those same connections. So yeah, your story, and career path and growth is really interesting. You had a kind of that trade school opportunity that got you into industry, then you worked your way into maintenance and engineering. Now, I think would be interesting for our audience to hear, this opportunity came up with Amazon. How did you move into that lane? Because it really is kind of a different lane of work from what you introduced at the beginning.
I came into Amazon actually. I was 50 and or getting there, and I thought I was looking for a retirement job. So I asked my wife. We talked things over, and I was looking for something that something that I knew. So it was easy for me, maybe not easy for everybody, but because I've been doing it my entire life, I thought I would step down and just take a wrench turner position for Amazon. And wife and I spoke, and with them having facilities all over North America and all over the world, and good insurance and benefits, I figured that I could go in there, work a year in one city, then transfer to another city, then another city, and that would be my wife and I's retirement. It would be a working retirement. But my brain didn't get along with that plan, gentlemen. My wife was excited to start that, but 3 months into my employment with Amazon, because of my social ambiguity, my lack of skill set with schmoozing, I guess, got me in a situation where they really did really want to fire me. But I was rescued by a fantastic manager. He pointed me toward an opportunity on the learning side, which is something I've been in the past, but I really didn't want to pursue. Like I said, I was just looking to honestly coast. But since it didn't work out, I got into the learning side, worked with the best manager Amazon has ever had, Kim Chavez. She has autistic children herself, and even though she's like 4 years younger than me, she treated me like a son, and she knew to look out for me on the things and give me room to grow. So that's one thing the neurodiverse do is we typically accomplish things at 200 and 300% of norm, and people say, "Ooh, that's cool," yada yada. But then they ask us to join in parties or present to the C-suites or do things that aren't in our repertoire or our wheelhouse, and then it looks like we're just silly. So those ups and downs, she always covered that. Autistics in general are brutally honest. And that's what really got me in hot soup most of the time, is being brutally honest. And when you're brutally honest with the leadership that's not receptive, well, I don't have to tell you, gentlemen, or the audience here, that it's not a good combination. But Kim Chavez, she made sure and opened doors. And again, the result of that is the highest training Amazon ever had. So there's something in there that she had that we all learned from. And I took a lot of that, and I taught that to the incoming leaders when they're coming in.
Excellent story.
That was a perfect story. And I think it speaks a lot to the fact that as a leader, any type of leader, or if you're in a subject matter expert field, we need to recognize there are going to be lots of different people that we interact with. And so I think one of the things that, I learned earlier in my career is you've got to identify that quick with your team that you're leading or a team that you're working with, so you know how to communicate. Because you're right, it can be when you get feedback that may be like really direct, critical, and harsh, and everybody else is giving you feedback's a little softer. That can be a challenge to accept. And I think you bring up a really good subject there, is that we've got to recognize that, because there's more identification of people with neurodivergent, I don't want to say issues, but experiences that they have. And you're absolutely right. There's great opportunities there to leverage folks and those skills. And I love the story with Kim Chavez that you told, that, she recognized where to let you go and where to give you some coverage. And I think that really speaks to, a really good servant leader that you had an opportunity to work with.
Such a great topic around training and the importance of training to teams. Derek, I'm thinking from the context of young leaders, supervisors, team leads, whatever titles they may have. AI set aside, what do you see through your experience? Because you obviously have a depth of experience on this topic. What do you see are sort of the critical elements that a leader really needs to ensure are happening as part of quality training that's going to stick and that really is going to elevate people's capabilities?
You need to know your team, know your people. In a world where we're doing more and more with less and less, it's easy to throw out an excuse, I didn't have time. We need to make time. Otherwise, we're just going to lose the opportunities there. So it's, I guess, throw in that phrase, stop and smell the roses. Understand, the positives that your team has, get to know them outside of work. I don't necessarily mean, go out bowling every Thursday night or something like that. But as a leader, things that we found out was take somebody for lunch, like in one-on-one, take them out of the work realm and just get to know them and know them, ask about their family, if they're comfortable sharing, ask about their hobbies and identify, but just do that who, what, when, where, how relationship. Ask those open-ended questions and give them a chance to share with you. Because I think Abraham Maslow said, way back when, we have certain things that we need in life.
Mm.
And one of those things we need is to be heard. And there's so much that our employees and our team will do for us if they just feel heard. They could push back 180 degrees at full steam, full pressure, and do nothing. Or we could listen to them, not change a thing, and still ask them to do the thing that we asked them to do. And just because they were heard, they're going to go, okay, they depressurized. Now they're going to go take care of business, whatever business is.
I love that reference to Maslow's, especially the Maslow pyramid, right? That talks about the different needs that people have. And you're referring to the need to be heard. And purpose of the tool is to understand that need to be met before you're able to go up the hierarchy of needs. And the peak of that is that people are able to reach their potential and have sort of this self-fulfillment with the work that they do. So love the reference, Derek. Thank you for mentioning that.
Yeah, Derek, I don't know if you've heard the term, I just looked it up again, called fika. It's a term in Sweden that really describes exactly what you talked about. And I learned about this from my son who's working over in Sweden now, and fika is a social break where typically coffee, danishes are provided, but it's a weekly event where the expectation is that you will participate, and the goal is where people can interact, connect, and chat. A lot of times it is one-on-one. Sometimes it can be small groups, and you don't talk at all about work. It's really about building that relationship. And so they've got a formal process that he was telling me about, happens once a week, called fika. It seems like the Swedish workforce has kind of cracked the code on that one. But yeah, it was interesting. It sparked my memory as you were talking about that.
I love the start of that. Okay, hey, you have to have that to be able to be effective at training others, right? What other elements do you feel are critical and maybe often missed by leaders in their organizations when it comes to training?
Certainly. Well, sticking with Maslow's pyramid for a second, safety is huge. And safety and communication are tied hand in hand. If your employees feel safe talking to you without the fear of reprisal, without the fear of getting fired, without the fear of getting, the crappy jobs, et cetera, et cetera. Part of that communication side is getting your employees to a level that they feel comfortable, they can say anything to you. So as a leader, you need to not wear your heart on your sleeve, I think as my dad used to say, and just keep the emotion out of it and just listen to what they have to say. And understand as a leader, it's important to get input from your entire team. But also as a leader, it is not your responsibility to count the votes and do what the majority says, because you're going to know things that your team doesn't. Just communicate that with them. Say, hey, I heard you. That's a great idea, et cetera, et cetera. Right now, from a regional, global perspective, our mission is to do something else. But we're definitely going to come back to that safety side. And my time at Amazon, when we first got started there, and to be honest, my time at Amazon, when they asked me to build this training program for all of RME that was coming in, they waited till the last minute. So guess what? I wasn't their first choice in creating this program. All the smart people said no because they saw that there was not enough time. And we had an attrition rate in our department of 83%.
Ouch.
Yeah, right. Ouch. It meant that nearly everybody that we hired left of their own accord within a year. And we actually talked about it internally, that we're throwing people in the deep end of the swimming pool and then just standing there and watch. Say, hey, I think this one's a keeper. This one's a keeper. Oh, no, he went down. Sorry, let's just hire somebody else. The cornerstone of my program when I built it, we started off really building the program on the fly. And it was a 2 week program. We would pull them away from their job, and we'd find a hotel somewhere. We started out in a Tampa hotel because I had a regional manager down there who was my SME that I brought him in to help teach. And we literally built the program in an agile fashion. Sometimes we would have a sign up or a slide that said the topic, and that was it. Then we talk about the topic, then go back to the hotel at night and say, all right, what did we present on today? What was important? So we actually listened to the people that were there. But I'm getting too far down that training pipeline that the first day of every program, whether it was a 10-day program or a 5-day program, the first day was nothing about what they needed to know from a business standpoint. The first day was implementing some sort of psychological or personality or behavioral assessment. We used a couple companies. One's called Behavior Styles, and then another one's called Neurocolor, but they're all in the type of, it divides the class up into 4 groups. And because we divide the class into 4 groups, it really didn't matter which assessment we were utilizing, whether it be the Effectiveness Institute or the Neurocolor. We were showing people that they're different. We were giving them a chance to recognize that 3/4 of the room is different than they are. Just throw some basic math. If you get one chance to make a good impression and you treat everybody like you would yourself, which is the golden rule, well, you're only going to be right 25% of the time. But I introduced what I call the platinum rule. Treat others like they want to be treated. And how do we do that? Well, we got to get to know that person. So the entire first day, 8 hours, we would sit in a classroom, 40, 45 people in the classroom, and we would talk and we would ask, what's the problems? How do we get through that? We'd do breakouts, and it was all about getting the team members to trust each other. And when we're in this room, whether it was Tampa or Seattle or anywhere in the nation, or went overseas even later in the program, it was about building a trust network. So to let them know they're not all by themselves. So that helped the leadership. And at the same time, through example, it taught them as leaders when they are hiring their own team, the floor personnel, the wrench turners, the techs, that they should go through the same thing. And that was the biggest reason that they give, because I received feedback at the end of every day, at the end of every week, on what was their favorite parts of the program. And it was always the getting to know each other and taking the time to understand how we should treat each other. And that was the core of success. It had nothing to do about knowledge from the company. Knowledge comes secondary. You got to train to understand and connect and build that bridge of trust and respect.
You remind me about a leader, I'm going to say in the last year, a leader that, and I've seen this sort of, it's almost like Groundhog Day, the movie, where you see the same thing sort of playing out, where a new leader to an organization has lots of potential. And this sometimes is encouraged by the company that brings them on. Is, it's almost like this focus on, hey, you need to deliver results right away. And because of that sort of edict or expectation, they don't focus on getting to know the people that they're leading. They don't focus on building those relationships. And more importantly, what you said was key, Derek, is trust. And, one of the things that we're fairly passionate about, aside from leadership, is me and Steve share a passion for operational excellence. And I don't believe that you can even take a meaningful step forward with operational excellence without a positive team culture where that psychological safety, that physical safety exists, and people trust their leaders and the organization that they're part of, because it's kind of like building a house on quicksand. You're going to be building stuff that's not very effective. And I have found that personally to be a very, very solid approach. But young leaders, they're too in a hurry to make a positive impression with the management. So they're trying to kick doors through actions and trying to get things done when people are like, I don't even know who you are. You don't know who I am. And you're asking me to do all these things that are very different for me.
I want to just circle back to the stat you gave us where they had the 80, I think you said 83 or maybe 86% turnover in that group that you had constructed this training mission around. And after you got going, I'm assuming that turnover rate dropped off significantly. Where'd you guys see it get down to after you were able to implement, this kind of leadership training program?
Within the first year, I think we had a 10-month cycle because we did not train in December and we started in January. But within that 10-month period, the 83%, which had been 83% for a while, attrition rate, we got that down to 30, I think 1 or 2% that first year. And the financial side of that equated to about $152 million year over year savings because of that reduced attrition. And it goes to show that if you put the employees first, that the company's going to benefit major, and some other things that have benefited by putting that trust in the people on the floor, the internal promotion rate. So the people on the floor applying and promoting to management roles went from 5% to 20% that first year. So that was huge, and there's additional company savings on that realm as well. And there's some other financial numbers that were there, but the KPIs. So Amazon is all about numbers. They built a company, AWS, just so they could work their numbers because their spreadsheets are so large. And at a single facility, depending on the facility, there's anywhere from 10,000 to 16,000 KPIs that have to work with the operations. They don't focus on all of them. Matter of fact, they use their technology to identify the problems, and then they address the problems as they come. But it wasn't about holding the teams accountable for all of the issues. The good leaders that were there, they reported that they worked on one issue at a time, generally the biggest. And as they'd take those off the board, then overall production would go up for operations. And let me step sideways for a moment. Another thing that we taught in our leadership training programs was that RME, which is reliability maintenance engineering team, is a partner with the operations team, which is out there on the floor. And it's important to build relationships, not just at the leadership level, but on the floor. And we implemented, or asked them to implement, suggested rather, it was always their choice, to have their floor personnel in the on the maintenance team go out and talk to the floor personnel on the operations team. And they got great insight. The operations, they've got so much going on. I would not want to be an operations manager at Amazon. It's just nonstop for them. So it's hard for them to step to the side and offer insights and observations. But if maintenance comes through and says, "Hey, how's everything going?" And operations either says, "Yeah, sounds good," or they might say, "You know what? We've heard this squeal back over in the corner on line 412. And so what does that do? That's a bonus for everybody." So now maintenance walks over to line 412. They hear the squeal. They check it out. Maybe it's a loose belt. Maybe it's a gearbox, and they address it during a lunch or a break. So you're not adding downtime. You're working on it, and it means that maintenance gets to it before it creates a big problem. It means that operations doesn't have a big glitch on their Gemba board. It just boils down to communication, and that communication stems from having good respect for each other.
That relationship between the operations or production team and the maintenance team is historically, I'll say, sort of the stereotypical relationship is sometimes even like adversarial, like, operators blame the mechanics for not knowing what to fix, or they don't fix anything. The mechanics are like, the operators are always breaking everything, and then we got to fix it, right? So there's that conflict that's happening between those two organizations. I think it's sage advice to tell leaders on both sides to say, hey, you really got to focus on getting the teams together and operating as one function, as one team, versus two separate teams. And I, being on the operation side, production side of a lot of roles, I have seen the huge benefit when that relationship's strong. And we're talking about training today. I've even had the pleasure of seeing maintenance teams that realize, you know what, I really need to know, like mechanics really need to know how to operate the piece of equipment, because the operator says things and the mechanic, they're seeing it from a context that doesn't really relate to how the machine operates. But if they understand the sequence, then they're able to see opportunity. As a matter of fact, recently there was a mechanic that went into operating a filter, and they started realizing that during the CIP process for the filter, they're like, there are so many opportunities for the operator to make a mistake. He's like, I was worried that I was going to make a mistake during that sequence and mess the whole thing up. So, we should maybe think about, we could easily automate this. These are all automated valves that the operator's going and saying, hey, open this valve, with the press of a button, close this valve. But we could literally automate that whole sequence and not allow the operator to make that potential mistake. And to me, it was just kind of one of those epiphany moments that both the mechanic and operators were like, why haven't we been doing this more often?
Spot on, Lupe. And the part that I've seen the best of, having a chance to work within some companies that supplied parts to Toyota, and just seeing how Toyota has that, where when that operator asks for help because they're not able to meet, the tact, everybody comes, right? And in organizations where there's this kind of casual meandering by maintenance or engineering out to, look at the potential problem and the frustration that gets raised by both the operations and the maintenance side in those environments where, as you guys both had mentioned, when you can connect them, get them working together side by side, and there's that not only unwritten understanding, but it's got to be really written understanding, right, between the leadership team, like, hey, who's your customer? Your internal customer is this group here. And then it's what you said also, Derek, it's creating that environment of respect so people can have a civil conversation. I think is, all that is paramount and critical. I was thinking what I'd like to do next, if you guys are open to it. I'd really like to understand, Derek, you sound like you had a really kind of cool thing going with your last role, but you stepped out to start this new company. And I think it really does tie into some of our conversation today. So walk us through that. What was the idea behind, hey, because you said you were near retirement or semi-retired, and all of a sudden you've got this passion project going that's really interesting. And I'm guessing it came out of a lot of your career experience, but probably a lot of the last couple of years as well.
In chaos, there is opportunity. So at Amazon, there always seems to be a lot of chaos. But in the project and the role that I was in, I built the program literally from scratch, used my hands on everything. I incorporated a lot of people. I think I counted one time nearly 100 SMEs that honestly donated their time because nobody was assigned to it. I'm a PMP by certification and training as well. So we're used to trying to get things done without sponsorship and help. The chaos part and building from scratch, that's my passion. I see, and maybe it's my autistic side, but I see patterns where others don't see patterns. And the bigger the chaos, the bigger the opportunity. So that first couple of years, oh my God, it was heaven working at Amazon and doing what we were doing. But by the time I got into year, 4 and 5, it was, well, the ship's running smoothly, right? We've done a lot of continuous improvement on the program following that agile mainframe, and I honestly wasn't having as much fun. When things become a little too tight like that, there's a lot of leadership overhead and such. So I stepped out of it because it was running on its own, and I felt like I had done something of value. In the fall of last year, 2024, I still have this passion for learning. I was asked last week on a program, if I had one word to describe how I want to be remembered, the first word that came to mind is teacher. Having knowledge at somebody's fingertips, or when they need it, get somebody knowledge at the speed of light. And now there's a correlation between knowledge and quality of life, no matter where you are in the world. So I wanted to be part of that. So when I saw this AI that it just really came to the consumer market in the last couple of years, and I've been a geek a lot of my life. I was building and selling. I had an online retail store on the internet. If anybody's old enough to remember when that started in 1989, I was online before 1989, and then by 1990, I was selling products on 5 different continents. And then by 1993, I was so dense and so ignorant, I closed my shop because I thought I'd saturated the market. But that was, I think, 2 or 3 years before Jeff Bezos opened Amazon. But I'm digressing a minute. I just wanted to touch base that the technology bug has always been in my blood. So we're a couple of years into this artificial intelligence in the consumer market, whether it be the Chat GPTs, Perplexities, that sort of thing. And I found out that I'm not replacing anybody, but those 100 people that volunteered their time, I found out that I can use AI. I can take that core of knowledge and I can put that core of knowledge in a database and then dynamically format it to a one-on-one scenario for anybody in an organization. And then that one-on-one scenario, it's a new way to onboard. It's literally, I took that knowledge and is able to connect with an artificial intelligent mentor. Honestly, for what it's doing, it's sentient. It sounds sentient. It's conversational. It sounds like a human. And right now, right, all three of us have our headsets on. And, if when they're connected to our phone, I made this leap again, and chaos is opportunity. I made this leap that I'm connecting AI with humans through a regular telephone and a POT system, plain old telephone system, no app, no Wi-Fi, no internet needed, available to be accessed by 100% of the world that's got a phone, and they can ask their AI mentor how to do something, and the AI mentor will walk them through it. And Lupe, you mentioned the operations side. How many times do new operators come up to the manager or the supervisor or somebody else, and they're standing with their hands in their pocket, waiting to say, "How do I start this machine?"
I'd say that can happen quite often. And that's very, very fascinating. And just to get a little deeper into how your app works, you have to load it with a lot of the knowledge about if there's work instructions, if there's technical manuals for equipment, et cetera. And what your tool basically does is it digests all of that and then it presents that as needed through that app, through the phone, to those individuals based on the interaction of, hey, I have this problem, and it'll go into that vast pool of knowledge that it has taken in and then give its best recommendation on how to proceed. Am I describing that correctly?
Yeah, you're describing that beautifully, Lupe. And I ask people to imagine their best technician or the best operator. And, if somebody says, Dana is my best skilled tradesperson, then I ask, well, what if all 20 people on your team were as good as Dana? How would that affect your downtime numbers, your OEE, your production, et cetera, et cetera? And they go, oh my gosh, that would be great. So what we've done at my company, the future is here. In all honesty and sincerity, we download Dana's knowledge into a database, and then we give everybody on the team access to that database in the same manner as they call Dana. If it's 3 p.m. on a Wednesday and Dana's on the beach in Honolulu, it's like, hey Dana, we need some help. We've got this issue. We've got line 7 is down. And oh yeah, press this button, do that, reset the pump. Oh, it's back up. Thank you. Without Dana there, they might be down all day or until the next person gets up, or you might have to call out to the OEM and ask them to get an expert, which might be another day or sometimes a month before you can get OEM engineers out there. So it's a way to scale Dana. And just in case anybody is concerned about AI replacing jobs, you know what? AI is going to replace all kinds of mundane jobs like looking up a book at a library type of thing. But for skilled trades and operators that are on the floor, that's not going to happen. AI is enhancing that employee to make them irreplaceable. And the best way we can do that, and it's a benefit to the employee, because if we look at those research that shows, hey, why do you work for this company? Why do you work for that company? The pay, which, we talk about it being a priority, the pay is ranked fourth. There's three other things above pay, and those three things are, I want to do something and I want to be heard. So we are empowering every employee, whether it's on the skilled trade side or the operations side, every frontline worker to truly empower them. And I honestly, when we say I'm empowering my employees, I'm thinking, really, what are you empowering them with? The chance to make decisions and take responsibility. But what about the knowledge they need to make those decisions? And that's what we're giving them right now, Lupe, is that knowledge at the speed of light, and it's in a conversation that sounds just like they're talking to Dana or Steven or Lupe or me, and it's caring and it's supportive. And above all, it's patient, which if you call Dana at 3 a.m. on a Saturday, he may not be patient at that point.
I would tell you that if someone's asking Steve or Lupe for advice on how to fix something, they are in a dire situation. But
it depends on what it is. But yeah, it's pretty accurate.
I'd be like, well, I think you should probably call somebody else, would be my AI advice if it had my voice. But that's a fascinating, and you echo one of the things that we've heard from. We had a gentleman that was with us that was also talking about kind of what AI is, what the impact of AI is going to be, maybe. And he says, hey, someone with AI is always going to outperform someone without AI. Speaks to that sort of enhancement that you're talking about. So it makes a lot of sense, and it'll be very interesting to see what happens in the future. We're close to our time. I did want to ask you for a couple things there, Erica. One is, if you had to go back in time and speak to yourself, what advice would you give yourself and why?
No, good. I would say that I would go back in time and give myself advice of how important the why is. It's not just the what, but it's the why. And to make sure that my eyes are more open and seeing the entire picture rather than having blinders on and seeing just what I want to see. And I think that's the advice all of us can benefit from. And I just wish I had it years ago, Lupe, Stephen.
Yeah, that's a great one. I recently heard that not only the why, but the who, right? Like, who do you serve? Once you have your why established, the other side of it, right? And it talks to the relationships that you started the conversation with, Derek. So I think that's spot on. So yeah, I would say for anybody listening, understanding that why and then the who is going to be critical. Going back to the leadership piece of this and the technology, Derek, I think as a leader, I might be afraid to have to learn the new technology, or do I set it up correctly? And so I think in our pre-podcast meeting, one of the things that you had mentioned was how you reduce that burden for leaders as they start to look at this kind of technology, introducing it, and also to get people over the fear of, hey, I don't want to give all my knowledge away because then you're not going to need me anymore. So can you talk about that just a little bit, what your approach has been in that space?
I think the big thing here, we're really 2 years into this AI information wave, and it really is information. It's really not so much about the technology or the platform, but it's about the sharing of information and having it right now. The internet came along in 1989. It really didn't crescendo until 2006, when everybody had access to their mobile phone and internet access. So that was about a 17-year from the origination. Now, I don't know if AI is going to take a full 17 years, but the adoption of technology is really a psychological event. And we deal with it right in manufacturing and enterprise. We call it change management. We're implementing change, and honestly, the change could be, which way does the paper, the toilet paper, get mounted on the wall, under or over, and there's always somebody that's going to be pushing against it, somebody for it, and then a lot of people in the middle. So the psychological aspect is going to have this AI adoption. It's going to take 15 to 17 years to really engage, just like it did the internet wave. So there's a mirror there. And the reason I say that is to temper the need to find a solution for a problem that does not exist. So if you're looking to just how do I implement AI and now you're trying to find a problem, that's just the backwards way of doing it. And just take a moment to pause and ask yourself, what are your real problems? And cement Occam's razor here. Whatever problems you have, prioritize them and look for the easiest or most obvious answer or most obvious solution. And honestly, 9 times out of 10, it's not going to be AI. If it is AI, sure, implement it and leverage it, but don't look for a problem just to implement a solution, because that's really putting the cart before the horse in that scenario.
Great advice, Derek. Thank you for that.
Fantastic advice. One of the things that I'd like to end this recording with is not everyone has, for several reasons, access to AI yet, or is able to maybe take advantage of the app that your team has. Until they are able to do that, what should they focus on? You mentioned psychological safety. You mentioned just safety in general and creating trust. But as far as the mechanics of training, what type of advice could give those leaders around, hey, you really want to focus on these things as you're trying to develop a better training program for your team?
Listen, it truly is grassroots. Listen to find out what the problems are and give yourself enough time. I want to give a shout out to the manager that I had that pointed me toward Kim Chavez's team. That's Jim McCullough. So Jim McCullough, hey, thank you, buddy, for pointing me in the right direction back all those years ago. Jim's back with Amazon after taking some time off himself, but he is the most fantastic patient manager, and I think everybody could learn from his role. He always got to know. He never raised his voice. He never chided anybody. If there was any, improvement suggestions, it was always done behind the scenes, one-on-one. It was never in public, and it was never to embarrass. And he was always supportive, and his goal was always to build up his people to go to the next level. And that's a KPI that we should all attain to is I don't want people just to work for me. How do I get them so they're not working for me and now they're leading their own team? So that's on the leadership side for sure. And one point of clarification, what we're doing is not an app. It's a telephone-based AI solution. And there's so many AI solutions that you have to throw money at, right? You got to throw server time, whether it's in the cloud or your own rack in your own system, or you have to buy new tablets or new notebooks or new laptops or new computers or new headsets or 3D gear. That's all CapEx stuff that you're throwing money at a problem and you still don't have the solution yet. So part of the chaos that I saw, gentlemen, was how do we implement AI in the most basic and simple form? Google has the most simple web page in the world, and they're one of the biggest and most successful companies in the world. Amazon it became one of the most successful companies in the world because they made it simple with one-click purchase, and now they own 57% of the retail market, which is, my gosh, that's huge. So I wanted to do something similar, follow in the footsteps of giants, stand on their shoulders, so to speak. And our solution requires no CapEx. And it's not just our solution, but look for solutions where you don't have to spend extra money.
I love it.
Ours is accessible just via a telephone call, and I think everybody could have access to that. One shout out is that every time we sell to a corporate environment. We make some money off them, sure, absolutely. But my heart is still set on helping those less fortunate, whether it be the neurodiverse and such. So every install that we do in the corporate environment, we give away an install for a nonprofit. And we're just looking to build the world together, gentlemen.
A noble task, Derek, a noble endeavor. And I appreciate all the knowledge and experience that you've shared with our listeners and with us. One of the pleasures of doing this podcast is that we ourselves get to be enriched by other people's experience and knowledge and their lives. This very much applies to today's recording, so I appreciate you for that. But with that said, I think we're going to wrap up. And this is Lupe Munoz.
And this is Steve McKeon. And thank you for joining us on the Leadership Exchange with our guest, Derek Crager.
Thank you.